In a cozy little house nestled in a verdant, old garden, lived a cat. Her name was Mimi, a name as soft and round as she was. Mimi was a graceful beauty with thick, fluffy cream-colored fur and large, emerald eyes. She loved basking on the windowsill, watching the playful dance of sunlight, and languidly stretching, showcasing her natural elegance. Her life was filled with unhurried joys, tranquility, and seemingly, no hint of trouble. The house was filled with kindness and comfort. Mimi's owner was John, a tall, good-natured man with a gentle voice and loving hands. He loved his cat unconditionally, and Mimi reciprocated, purring her quiet song when he stroked her soft back. Each morning began with Mimi jumping onto his bed, demanding her share of affection, and John, smiling, happily obliged. He always said Mimi wasn't just a cat, she was a part of his soul. Mimi's life was filled with small rituals that made each day special. After her morning cuddles, she would explore the garden, chasing butterflies and catching sunbeams. During the day, she would nap in her favorite armchair, and in the evening, like clockwork, she would come to sit on John's lap, listening to his calm voice and enjoying the warmth of his hands. Yet, even in this idyllic setting, a faint whisper of unease, like a gentle breeze, hinted at something around the bend of fate, something that could disrupt this quiet harmony. Besides John, other people played small but significant roles in Mimi's life. Sarah, a neighbor, was a kind-hearted young woman with a great love for animals. She often visited, bringing Mimi treats, and the cat, usually reserved with strangers, always greeted her with joy, purring and allowing head scratches. Sarah admired Mimi's beauty and grace, often saying she'd never seen such a cat. Another important figure in Mimi's life was a little girl named Lily. She lived next door to Sarah and, like all children, adored animals. Lily often visited Mimi, stroking her fluffy fur and talking to her in a soft, childish voice. Mimi, despite her reserved nature, allowed Lily to hug her, sensing the genuine kindness in her heart. The girl often brought Mimi her drawings and shared her childhood secrets, as if the cat were her best friend. And, of course, there was Mark, the local veterinarian. He was cheerful and attentive, kind-hearted and skillful. He cared for Mimi's health, giving her annual vaccinations and offering advice on her care. Mark always found time to play with Mimi, and strangely, the cat trusted him. Mark often said Mimi was a special cat, not just outwardly but inwardly, radiating kindness and calm. One morning, as the sun's rays began to filter through the leaves, something unexpected happened. John, as usual, woke up, reached out to pet Mimi, but she wasn't there. He thought she might have gone for a walk in the garden, but she was nowhere to be found. Worried, he called her name, but only silence answered. John, forgetting breakfast, searched the entire house, but Mimi was gone. He went into the garden, looked under bushes and trees, checked every corner, but the cat had seemingly vanished. John grew nervous, panic setting in. Where could his beloved Mimi be? What could have happened to her? Had she gotten lost? These questions haunted him, and the unease he'd felt in recent days had escalated into real fear. That morning, the tranquility of the cozy house was shattered. The idyllic scene transformed into anxiety and uncertainty. Mimi, who seemed an inseparable part of the place, had disappeared, leaving behind only emptiness and a bitter sense of loss. While John frantically searched for his beloved pet, Mimi, frightened and disoriented, found herself in a completely unfamiliar place. She didn't remember how she got there. Everything around seemed alien and hostile. The loud sounds of cars, harsh smells, and frightening shadows all instilled fear and bewilderment. She tried to find her way home, relying on smells that vaguely reminded her of something, but to no avail. The city streets were a maze, with danger lurking around every corner. She was hungry and exhausted, and with each step, her hope of returning home dwindled. In her wanderings, Mimi encountered various animals, stray dogs, aggressive cats, other lost souls like herself. Some were hostile, but others offered help and shared food. She particularly remembered a cat named Rusty. He was old and wise, and he taught her to survive in this cruel world. He showed her where to find food and water, how to avoid danger, and how to trust her instincts. Mimi, despite all the hardships, didn't lose hope. Deep in her feline heart, she continued to believe that she would one day return home to John and bask on his lap again. This hope gave her the strength to keep going, despite fatigue and fear. Days turned into weeks, and Mimi continued her wanderings through the city. She learned to hunt mice and birds to feed herself, becoming more cautious and watchful. But despite her newfound agility and courage, she still longed for home. She dreamt of nights spent on John's lap, his gentle voice, and the cozy house where it was always warm and peaceful. One day, when Mimi, utterly exhausted, was hiding under a car, she heard a familiar voice. It was Lily, strolling with her mother. Lily, seeing Mimi, immediately recognized her. She ran to the cat, joyfully exclaiming, "Mimi! It's you!" But Mimi, scared and distrustful, reacted quite differently than Lily expected. She jumped back, hissing and preparing to attack. The girl, upset by this reception, didn't understand why her favorite cat was behaving this way. Lily didn't know that Mimi had become a different cat, wilder and more cautious, and that she needed time to trust humans again. This incident only added tension to the already difficult situation. Mimi realized that the road home would be even longer and harder than she had imagined. But at the same time, it gave her new hope. She now knew that she was being sought after and waited for, and that she would eventually be found. One morning, while Mimi was once again searching for food, she stumbled upon a familiar place. It was Mark's veterinary clinic. The smell of medicines and clean sheets somehow calmed her. She cautiously peered through the window and saw Mark lovingly examining a puppy. Mimi, overcoming her fear, entered the clinic. Mark, seeing the cat, didn't initially recognize his former house pet. But when Mimi approached him and meowed plaintively, he suddenly realized who it was. "Mimi? Is that you?" exclaimed Mark, surprised and delighted. He gently picked up the cat and examined her carefully. Mimi was dirty, emaciated, with minor scratches, but her eyes still shone with hope. Mark immediately understood she needed help. He fed Mimi, gave her warm water, and treated her wounds. He was relieved when she seemed to know him. "I'll call John, he must be frantic," he thought. But suddenly, Sarah entered the clinic. Lily had told her about the encounter with Mimi. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes and wept with joy. Mark reassured Sarah and immediately dialed John's number. Within minutes, John, breathless and agitated, burst into the clinic. He saw Mimi curled up in Mark's arms and gasped with happiness. He knelt down and gently took the cat in his arms, holding her close. Mimi, feeling the warmth of his hands and familiar scent, began to purr loudly, pressing against him. She was home. That evening, Mimi fell asleep again on John's lap, as if those long and terrifying days of separation had never happened. She was happy to be back home with her beloved owner. John, in turn, was overjoyed at the return of his beloved pet. After her ordeal, Mimi became even more affectionate and grateful. She always greeted John at the door and never left his side. She learned to appreciate the warmth and comfort of her home, as well as the care and love of those around her. Mimi became more than just a cat, she became a symbol of hope, faith, and devotion. Her story was told to everyone who knew her. And she inspired people to cherish every moment of their lives and value their loved ones. Mimi's story is more than just a tale of a lost and found cat. It's a story about maintaining hope and faith in the face of adversity. It's a story about how kindness and love can overcome any obstacle, and how mutual support and devotion are the most important values that make us human. And, of course, it's a story about how a small purring miracle can become the greatest happiness in life. Minnie showed everyone that even animals can feel and love, that they need our care and attention, and that they too can become our best friends. Her story is a reminder that there's room for miracles in the world, and that everyone who opens their heart to love and kindness will surely find their happiness. And, of course, Minnie's story is a call never to lose hope, even in the most desperate situations, because beyond the darkest clouds, there's always a sun ready to warm us with its heat and light.